not exist only in textbooks, and oftentimes is poorly represented in education. So we want to come here into this place to say that no, our story is still being written. Our story is changing every single day by the actions that we're taking, and that it really is time for action. And talking about how traditional senses of activism aren't enough anymore, and that we really must change the game. This concept of our story is not history. Oftentimes we're not educated on indigenous histories, so we have to learn them ourselves, whether that's through cultural education or whether that's through hard life experiences. Jaden, you were talking about how you grew up, a little detached from that cultural identity. I can relate to that too, being from Colorado and my people being from California. But all of us have our own responsibility to say that indigeneity, being indigenous, isn't something we're going to be taught in school, but it's something we're going to write with our own hands today. Talking about go ahead, Jaden.
Oh, it's like sometimes in our school, I feel like we know more about dinosaurs than indigenous people. And your whole illustration of like the dinosaurs kind of makes me think of how we think of indigenous people. Like, we didn't die off, we're still here. And people don't realize that. So I thought, good image.
Of course. And talking about how it's time for action, that with my people, Kumeyaay people, being down at the border of the United States and Mexico, that our people are taking a stand right now to make sure that we have our connection with our relatives down there and protecting sacred lands. We have our brothers and sisters in Canada fighting for their rights to sovereignty and freedom of existence on their land. Climate change, something that affects all of us, whether it's indigenous people or non-indigenous people, that really will affect our futures, and that it's time for action. It's no longer enough for us to say, well, someone else will do it. Someone else, like, leave it to the next generation because I'm doing my thing right now. That we're running out of time as people existing on this earth. Also talking about how we have to change the game. That's something that we're going to be talking about throughout this webinar series, is about how traditional activism really can be changed and really can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Expedited through the advancements that we have now. Right now, we're talking about, our sovereign identities and talking about what we hope to see in our communities digitally. We're all who knows how far apart. Bree, who we're going to introduce in a second here, is actually in Oklahoma right now, but we're able to have her come in and give some of her wisdom because of the ways that the future has given us this technology. And these are some things that we're able to incorporate into our movement, use colonizer tools to decolonize ourselves. So without further ado, I want to welcome Brianna Bailey to introduce herself and really be our first presenter for this webinar series. Bree is a great friend of mine. I cannot say how happy I am that she is here today. Bree and I go way back in terms of our friendship and our journeys of activism. We actually grew up together, and I'm so excited to see what you have to share with us today. But yeah, take it from here, Bree.
Thank you, Mason. Okay.
Bree, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, and then you can share yours.
Try to figure out how to do this. Okay, right. Let me know, Mason, if that looks correct. Or
yes, that looks great.
Is it showing how, or is it showing the side bars too?
Yes. Go to the home tab right underneath the green. And just click that.
Okay.
And click it again.
And then what is it?
Oh, wait, the home tab, just click it one more time. Like.
Oh, on the, sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Well, here, do you see where all the slides are on the left?
Yes.
That should be like a slide thing, like how you can make a window bigger. Slide that to the left. And then the home above paste, that little image. In the left. Click that, home.
Yeah, I'm on the, oh. Okay, do I have it now? Does that look right? Does it look right, Mason?
Yes, that looks perfect. Also, quickly, before I forget, I also want everyone to know, all of our participants, thank you again so much for being here. Any questions that you guys have throughout this presentation, throughout anything we're saying, anything you want to throw in or add, please type them into the chat. If you see the bottom of your screen, if you're in full screen, or the bottom of the window that you're using, it should say participants chat, or participants in chat. If you want to hit the chat button, you'll be able to type in any questions or any comments that you have during the series. So please feel free to use that feature, and we'll be addressing those questions toward the end with a little bit of time for discussion.
All right. Am I good, Mason?
No, you're perfect. Go
Okay,
ahead.
cool. Thank you. All right, Chokma everyone. So Holchu Foat Bree Bailey, Chikasha Saya. Hello, my name is Bree Bailey, and I am an enrolled member of the Chickasaw Nation, and I am here to share my story with you all for this first week of the webinar series, and I'm looking forward to it. So here's a little outline of what I'm going to be talking about today, just so you guys can kind of see the direction that we're going. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and my journey, different Indigenous organizations that I've been involved in, how that has impacted me personally being involved in these organizations, and then what it means to be an Indigenous activist and how you can get involved as well. All right, so a little bit about myself. So I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a student, and I'm an artist. So I am a current first-year student at the University of Oklahoma in the College of Dentistry. I am pursuing dental hygiene right now, so it is a 2-year program, and hopefully I will graduate within the upcoming year or 2 years. In my free time, I love to paint and draw. As you can see, my little painting there of Harry Potter, one of my favorite movie series. I love to travel. This past year, I got to go to Yucatan. And then the summer before that, I actually got to go to Seattle, Washington to visit one of my really good friends. I also love sports and just meeting new people. So above all things, though, my family means the entire world to me. So my parents are pictured there in the top, and then my older brother is in the bottom left. So that kind of brings me to my Chickasaw culture. And, anyways, let's see here. I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, there we go. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about my family, and in the bottom right there is my great-great-grandma, Malcy, and then her son, my grandpa George. So my great-grandpa was put in a boarding school here in Ardmore, Oklahoma, and as most of you know, the trauma was quite awful that he experienced, and so after leaving or getting out of the school, he decided to move to Colorado. So that's kind of how my family ended up in the southern part of Colorado. And you know, the point of those boarding schools was to separate Indigenous people from their culture. And in my family, we are a prime example of kind of that happening. My dad and grandpa used to always ask my grandpa about what he remembered of Chickasaw culture. And he said, you know, when you get beat so many times, you tend to want to forget it. And so because of that, my grandpa and on down the line, we kind of were cut off of learning Chickasaw tradition and cultures. So for me, that meant no evidence of any sort of culture, kind of how Mason and Jaden was talking about earlier. It wasn't easy growing up in Denver, and you know, you hear like, well, you are this, but what does that mean? And so it took a lot of personal reflection. And kind of all I was really left with, I guess, is those objectified images that fill our society. So, you know, they're in those classrooms, in the textbooks, they're on social media. We see them in the mascots of our athletic teams. So as a great granddaughter of a Chickasaw, what is my role as an Indigenous youth and as a leader, and how do I connect those two ideas together? So luckily for me, and there was a program through our school district called Alien. This was when I was in high school there in Broomfield. It's called the American Indian Youth Leadership Institute. So I was one of about 5 Indigenous students in my high school, one of which was Mason. And we had probably one Indigenous teacher on the campus, which was actually Mason's dad. So there wasn't really any reflection of like who we were, like going to school, because there wasn't many Indigenous youth like in our area necessarily. So ALE was definitely one of the best opportunities that I had in high school. I was a member of the organization for 3 years, and then my senior year, Mason and I were co-chairs of the organization. So I met some of my closest friends in that program, and I'll touch on some of the events that we put on later in the presentation. All right, as I mentioned, I'm currently at the University of Oklahoma. So I didn't start here. I actually started at Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. And then I transferred to OU in January of 2019. So coming in at the spring semester, I didn't really know anybody at all. And it was pretty intimidating. But I remember right as almost as soon as I got here, I got an email from one of the sponsors of Gamma Delta Pi, and it's the first Native American sorority at the University of Oklahoma. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know anyone. We're just going to take a shot at this and see what happens. And very similar to Ailey, it is one of the best decisions I've made. I've met some of my best friends in this sorority and had the opportunity to learn a lot about not only Chickasaw culture, but just Indigenous culture in the state of Oklahoma, and what that means for other people that are my age and going through similar things that I am. Let's see here. Okay, so now going on with some projects and participation that I've been involved in. So with Ailey, one of the biggest projects that we put on was the Empowering Native Youth in Metro Denver Conference. So this was in March of 2017 at Denver University. And it was a 2-day conference that was put on primarily only by the youth and our adults. So it was a youth partner or youth adult collaboration. And we ended up having over 50 participants attend the event. And Mason and I were co-speakers of the entire weekend. So it was a lot of fun. But doing that really taught me a lot, just as far as learning how to work with people who aren't my age at all, as well as public speaking and organizing, fundraising, and kind of taking charge of something that meant a lot to us. So it's very successful, and I'm very thankful for that. From that, because of the work we put in, Unity actually was held in Denver that year. So it was in the summer of 2017, and all of us students who put on the Empowering Native Youth Conference were asked to be on the planning committee. So being part of that was just an honor in itself, just to be recognized for the hard work that we put in as seniors in high school, juniors in high school at the time. I want to share a story about the Unity Conference that has stuck with me ever since 3-4 years ago. So I remember we were with the Ailey group, and I remember it was breakout session time, and we were kind of just walking around the Denver Convention Center trying to find a breakout session to go to. And I remember, I'm pretty sure it was just Mason and I were just talking, and all of a sudden we heard a drum like coming down the hallway, and we were like, what is going on? Like, this is so just odd, because obviously everybody at the time was in a breakout session, or supposed to be. And so we see this group of students coming with these posters that are in that picture right there. And they were singing, and it kind of got louder as they were coming towards us, and we were like, we need to go see what's going on. So we kind of just followed them in to the breakout session room that they were going to, and it was actually Bank of America. So Bank of America was giving a presentation to Indigenous youth, just to teach them, I guess, more about investing their money in banking. And at the time, this was around the Dakota Access Pipeline and all of that was going on. And so we learned that Bank of America was actually funding fossil fuels. And I remember one elder confronting the gentlemen that were speaking on their behalf, and she said, "What do you have to offer us other than money?" She said, "Because we have water. And if you take that from us, you're taking that away from your children and your grandchildren." And I think that was just so powerful to me, because like to be caught off guard like that, those men had no idea what to say or what to do at that point. And it was started by Indigenous youth, and we were fortunate to have the elders follow along with us and be there to support us, because it's important to educate, even if people don't realize companies that they're working for, might not know what those companies are, the more harm, I guess, that they're doing than good. So I think it was a very powerful moment. Then that about a month later, so from the Empowering Native Youth Conference that we put on, we actually had Spirit of the Sun, who was one of our main sponsors. So they contacted me it was in April, because they had applied to present at this Generation Indigenous conference that was held in Seattle. And they had asked, it was 10 organizations that were selected to go out and present. And so they called me when we found out we were accepted based off of the work that we put on for this conference, and asked if I would go out and speak on their behalf. So that was a really fun time, but it was just cool to hear about other organizations who had success in trying to tackle the gaps and like disparities that are within Native youth. And I was the youngest presenter there at the time. I was 18 years old, and everybody there was well over their 30s at least. And so it was quite intimidating. I've never really spoken in front of a group of only adults. But from that experience, I was actually offered pretty much immediately after giving my presentation leadership positions within different tribal communities there in Seattle. So that was really exciting for me, considering I had committed to going to Gonzaga there in Spokane, and it was just incredible to see how willing the Indigenous population there was offering some support to me, who was going somewhere I'd never been. So a few months later, I was notified that I also was the recipient of the Youth Multicultural Award based out of Boulder. So this award celebrates people of color who have made significant contributions to the Boulder community. So that was a great honor, and I was very thankful for that. And then one of my most proudest moments, I think, of anything that I've really been involved in regarding the Indigenous groups that I've participated in was getting to be a panelist, next generation panelist at the Dynamic Women of the Chickasaw Nation Conference. So they kind of heard about the events that I've been involved in and took leadership roles in. And I remember receiving an email asking if I would go out and fly from Spokane to Oklahoma to speak among women of my tribe. And, I felt like I didn't know that much, but it was just an honor that they were recognizing my strength and leadership and contributions as a Chickasaw woman. So I actually got to meet Miss Oklahoma 2018, Triana Brown, who is also a Chickasaw, enrolled Chickasaw. All right. So I share these stories with you to remind you that you don't have to be 10 minutes from your tribal land to make significant impact on your communities. You might just have to look a little bit harder to find Indigenous people within your area. So Spirit of the Sun is a great example of a nonprofit that is there in Denver that you can volunteer at or call if you want to get involved but don't really know how. And so that kind of brings me more to Oklahoma now that I am closer to Chickasaw territory. So a lot of the things that I've done here in Oklahoma have been more with my sorority. starting with just simply volunteering. So we do a lot of serving through volunteer work. So at any local powwow or stomp dance, we are usually serving dinner or raffling items off. And we've also made baby blankets for moms who can't provide or don't have resources for their new babies. And then within 3 months of actually being in the sorority, the girls nominated me to be co-chair of our biggest fundraiser, and that is our basketball tournament. So this was supposed to be last spring, or this past spring, but unfortunately due to COVID, we had to cancel it all. But you know, putting in the work for it, it was challenging for sure, especially with school, but we wanted to make it the biggest fundraiser, or biggest tournament that we've ever had. So starting from this summer, the year before that I knew that I was co-chair, we started contacting local tribes, casinos, businesses, artists. I contacted Nike N7 and got around $700 donated of N7 gear. And then beyond that, we knew we needed to keep fundraising because of course you have to pay for the gym and tournament t-shirts and things like that. And so picture there in the middle, we did an Indian taco sale and bingo night. So there I am cooking some of the taco meat, but and then we also did an online raffle on Facebook. So some of the things that we raised or had donated, we raffled off in a number raffle. So kind of similar to the Empowering Native Youth Conference, it really taught me how to collaborate and speak with people who might not be familiar with Indigenous culture or tradition at all, but spread that through something that is common in not only just Indigenous community, but non-Indigenous as well. Basketball is, everybody knows it and loves to play, so it is a good thing for us to be able to share our name and like who we are. Another thing that I am involved in at OU is the Chickasaw Nation Recruitment and Retention Program. So this is a program for Chickasaw students, and we just had a new building actually renovated on our campus. So, but once or twice a month, we actually get to do different cultural activities. And so as you can see there in the bottom panel, I got to make baby moccasins, and we do a lot of things together. So that is one thing that I have been very thankful for, just getting to learn more about specific Chickasaw traditions and not so much something more generalized, I guess. And then to the right of that, my sorority got to travel to Haskell University and listen to Native American lawyer Sarah Deer speak. So I don't know if you guys have heard about her, but she is actually inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame, and she focuses on federal Indian law and victims' rights. So she was speaking to us about the Violence Against Women's Act, VAWA, and at the time she was just explaining the proposed revisions regarding it. So in 2010, Indigenous people were finally like granted to be under or considered under VAWA, but the problem was that it didn't allow tribal governments to prosecute non-Native perpetrators who enact violence against Native women. And a lot of the acts that are committed against Indigenous women do occur by non-Native men on tribal land. And so it kind of just, really reminded me of the importance of, not only just being involved kind of with my friends or different organizations, but also politically as well, because there's a lot going on that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. And finally, one of my most recent projects that I'm very proud of was actually organizing a Black Lives Matter fundraiser. So obviously this summer, I was in Colorado at the time due to COVID and everything going on, and I kind of felt really hopeless. I didn't have my sorority near me. I mean, I had my really good friends there in Denver, but I felt like I couldn't go anywhere, or I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of contacted the sorority and asked about how everybody else was feeling, and they kind of felt the same way. And so I kind of told them like, hey, we need to do something, like, I don't know what, but we need to try to help out in whatever way we can. So we decided to contact other multicultural groups on our campus and design a t-shirt together to sell for our Black Student Association. This was kind of a difficult project, as kind of Mason mentioned earlier, like with everything going on and still going on, we are having to rely a lot more heavily on technology in order to get things done. And so me being in Colorado, I was having to contact different businesses in Norman, Oklahoma, and host Zoom meetings to try to plan this project. We ended up raising over $2,000 in these t-shirts, and that's just based off what we made off profit. And so we ended up giving about close to 1,500 of that to the Black Student Association, and then the remaining funds, the multicultural groups are getting to allocate to different organizations. So it was a really powerful experience for me, and I'm very proud of it because, you know, we just have to come together as different multicultural groups and make sure that we are supporting one another when it's needed, especially. But in all that I've done and that I keep continuing to do, I've actually met some pretty inspirational people that I'd like to share a few pictures with. So in the bottom left there, I mentioned I met Miss Oklahoma. So she was Miss Oklahoma America of 2017, Triana Brown, and she was actually second runner-up of Miss USA of 2019. So very cool experience for me, a little fangirl moment. And then let's see, in the bottom right is Tatanka Means, an Oglala Lakota activist and actor. Directly above there, that photo is John Echohawk Pawnee. He's the executive director of the Native American Rights Fund since 1977. And then let's see here, to the left of Tatanka Means is Mary Kim Titla. She's San Carlos Apache and Unity's executive director since 2013. And then there's a few others that I have pictured there, but it's just really cool knowing the leadership opportunities that I've had and the incredible people that I've got to meet along the way. So let's see here. All right, so now I have Why Not You? So we know we're on Indian land, and we know that this country is Indian land, but kind of how Mason was talking earlier, we don't really get recognized in that sense. So does the American culture value the Indigenous narrative? Well, in high school, we learn about Christopher Columbus, but of course we don't learn about who he came in contact with. We learn about Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation, but we don't learn that just a few days before he signed off on one of the largest mass hangings of 38 Dakota men. So I want to come back to what I shared with you at the beginning of the presentation regarding those objectified images that we grew up trying to discern and understand. So in this bottom left picture is kind of where I want to focus, but in all of these pictures, you can see that we are continued to be viewed as caricatures. The dominant society, I guess, decides what we look like, what we talk like, and what we act like. So again, in that bottom left photo there is our sorority at OU. And this happened last year, but they posted these photos as a recruitment advertising, and kind of brought to our sorority's attention. And, you know, immediately I felt like most of the girls felt frustrated and didn't, you know, hurt. And so we kind of took a break and thought it through and saw it more as an opportunity to educate. Regardless of the intentions of the sorority, our culture isn't an aesthetic, and we had to bring that to their attention. They ended up writing us an apology letter, but it still was very shocking, I guess, to know that other multicultural organizations on campus don't recognize or respect necessarily others. So it was just a very telling time. But since our story is so often omitted, it minimizes our value in some sense. But however, you can find that the negative that we see allows us to transform and change. So if you talk to those around you, or I'm sure any of the guests are on this presentation, you're going to find some similarities in the stories that they have and that they've experienced. I'm going to share a couple statistics with you, but let's see here. So nearly 84% of Indigenous women experience violence in their lifetime. The unemployment rate for Alaskan Natives and American Indians in 2019 was 6.6%, compared to the national average of 3.9%. And from 2016 to 2018, 42.4% of Indigenous youth ages 16 through 24 were enrolled in school, compared to the total population of 52.8%. So with these numbers in mind, I just want to remind you that we're the next generation. We have the power to control and reverse those trends. And what kind of future is possible? So a few individual actions that I would like to share with you. If you feel like you aren't maybe part of a bigger organization or something, these are a few things that you can do on your own that can help transform our society. So learning about your culture. So obviously with COVID right now, it's a lot harder to go to tribal dances or powwows or stomp dances or anything like that. However, I do know that a lot of tribes are really working to advance their mass communication through technology. So see that as an opportunity to get connected. And if there's ways for you to learn your language, take advantage of that. Maybe practice a little bit every day, but it's really important because the language is the way that we communicate with one another. And unfortunately for Indigenous communities, it's dying really quickly. Some educational opportunities. So Native youth suicide rate is 2.5 times higher than the overall national average. And it's the second leading cause of death for Indigenous youth. So whether you know yourself a lot about drugs, alcohol, and teen suicide, see if there's informational courses in your area, or if you feel like that is something that you're well knowledge on, maybe lead an educational course and relating that to Indigenous populations specifically and the disparities within, so that we can bring awareness to these issues that a lot of people don't know about. Using your tribal ID at the airport. So I actually have a story about this, but my freshman year, I believe, of college, I had gone to Phoenix to visit one of my really good friends. And somehow in that weekend, I had lost my ID, and I got to the airport and I started panicking because it wasn't in my wallet. And I was like, what am I going to do? I have to board the plane. And I remembered I had my tribal ID with me. And so I went to the security and I gave it to them. And she looked at me like I was crazy. She was like, I've never seen one of these. And I remember she was like, you might have to go to like this other, higher security place to make sure that this is valid. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I just need to get home. Like, this is crazy. But I really want you to think about like, how often do those people see tribal IDs at the airport? Probably not very often. So you're changing the stereotypes and hopefully by doing these little things. And then volunteering, cooking meals for Indigenous elders and elders in general. Again, changing that stereotype of what Indigenous youth is and what that looks like. Native nonprofit organizations there in Denver. So Spirit of the Sun is a great one for you to contact if you're looking for looking to volunteer in the Indigenous community, or I know they have great resources if you're trying to get connected with other Indigenous youth. The Native American Rights Fund and the Denver Indian Health and Family Services. So those are a few I know of there in Denver that are opportunities for you guys to contact and get involved with if you're maybe not have something directly on your campus. And then educating your peers. I know that there's a lot of negative connotation when you hear that because I know I've heard many Indigenous of my own Indigenous peers tell me, well, it's kind of not my responsibility to do that. Like, they should know. They should educate themselves. Again, I want to remind you that we have to consider the circumstances of their background knowledge. The high school education that we receive is the same high school education that they receive. And so if they aren't hearing your story and learning about what that looks like, they're not going to care to know or want to know. And so I think a lot about now that Halloween is coming up, it's a perfect opportunity for you to raise awareness and bring that Indigenous voice to the table. Whether that's making flyers and, passing them out at your school or posting on social media, making people aware of the issues and the problems with wearing costumes like the Pocahontas Disney costume that is so often seen. So, but overall, you just need to share your story. We need the Indigenous voice at the table, and you can't let it be silenced. So now I kind of want to talk about some other ways you can get involved at a little bit of a larger scale, whether that is at a university or high school. So this is actually at OU, but every year we host at least one powwow and stomp dance. We usually do one each semester. And while we are a larger campus than some, know that Indigenous people will come to dance. When they hear that drum, they come running. So I know that there's approximately 7,000 Indigenous people there in Denver. And I mean, every year the Denver March brings around 1,600 dancers. So this is a great way to get more involved culturally and with other Indigenous youth, great leadership opportunity. And it's really fun to put on and go to. So that is the first thing that I have for you. And then Indigenous Peoples Day. So again, this is at OU. We start every Indigenous Peoples Day really early in the morning. So we have our Indigenous fraternity come and set up our teepee on the South Oval, which is like the main area of our campus. And we have a drum every year and singing and dancing. We'll usually have the presidents of our various Indigenous organizations give presentations and kind of discuss the importance of Indigenous Peoples Day and how that affects them personally, and again, sharing their stories. And then towards the end of the day, we do a little bit more fun, I guess, activities. We play a game of stickball in the South Oval, and it's pretty crazy because you have, non-natives on campus walking around and they see this big pole and these people running around and kind of looking like, what is going on? And so we actually, it's a good opportunity to educate people who don't know anything about Indigenous culture. And it's kind of funny because we'll end up getting some OU football players and athletes out there playing stickball. So it's a lot of fun. And then we finish the day usually with like a softball game with all of our members of the Indigenous community. All right, so then MMIW week. So this is dedicated, it's an entire week dedicated to hosting different events to bring awareness to the missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic. It's one of my favorite weeks of the entire year. So starting off, we usually will do the Red Dress and Red Sand Project, which is pictured in pretty much most of these photos here. So we'll hang traditional red regalia throughout campus off trees. Obviously, we don't leave them out there all day without someone being there with it, but and then we will do a march usually in the morning with different posters and signs with statistics and hashtags and things like that. But then what really catches everybody's attention beyond the traditional regalia is the Red Sand Project. So as you can see, I'm pouring sand right there in the cracks of our campus sidewalks. And so what we do is we make a flyer, very small, tiny flyer, but it has statistics and ways for people to get involved and kind of explains what MMIW is. And so as we're pouring sand all across campus, these people are like, what is this? What's going on? So then they start asking questions. And so that's, our opportunity to educate other people on our campus about what it is. And it's seriously one of the most powerful things that I've done at OU. So it's really awesome. And the pouring the sand just represents the many numerous Indigenous women and girls who have fallen through the cracks of our justice system. And so another thing we did last year was we invited Abigail Echo Hawk out to, she's enrolled Pawnee, but to give a presentation during a live painting that we did in sort of like a little fundraiser at And she concentrates on policy and institutional change to eliminate disparities of women of color. So she talks a lot about MMIW and those issues that are within that women of color face regarding law and things like that. And then we also hosted a movie night and informational. So we played the movies at Red Girls Reasoning and Wind River, and then we hosted pizza, and it was really cool to have other people there, and just ask questions about it. And then we also made some stickers that we passed out, but I don't have a picture of those. Okay, so then here's a few other things. I probably won't go over all of them, but I just want to leave you guys with some ideas on how you can, bring Indigenous culture to your campus. So taco sale and bingo, I touched on earlier. Doing a craft night with other Indigenous students on your campus. You can basket weave, or get a drum and sing together. And then, of course, our Native Hoops tournament, volunteering, doing community dinners. So doing sort of like potluck style, maybe once a month, and getting everyone together. At my university, big football school, so we do sport watch parties together because some students don't go to the games. And so it's kind of fun to just sit around together and do that. And then study halls, or putting an intramural team together. So those are just a few of my recommendations as far as like what you can do on your campus in particular, to get involved with one another and, bring awareness of Indigenous culture. Okay, so I want to conclude by asking you a few questions. So with all this information that I gave you, I want you to think about what you're going to do with it. You now have the responsibility to take action and share what you've learned with other people, I guess, and use your voice and bring it to the table. So I want you to think about how you see yourself as an Indigenous youth. Are you looking through the lens of like your own eyes and that Indigenous perspective, I guess, or are you seeing it through what society defines Indigenous people to be? Through that, are you letting your voice be silenced, or are you sitting at the table with other people of color? And if you're not doing so, how are you going to let your voice be heard, and how are you going to speak out and share your story with others? So I really thank you guys for having me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me speak for a little bit. I have attached my email there. If you guys have any questions, further questions, I guess, beyond this presentation, I'm happy to answer them, or looking to start a bigger organization or anything like that on your campus, I have contact and resources. So just let me know. But thank you so much.
And thank you, Bree. Everyone, if you can send some positive energy to Bree, only for the fact that she has a test tomorrow. and I think we're all back to school feeling the dread of tests coming up. So Bree, good luck with that. And thank you again so much for being part of it. So super fast. I know that we're running up on 9 o'clock here, or 8:30 here. So I want to let you guys know that we're going to still be doing discussion, but I'm going to do a few wrap-up slides. We're going to stop the recording so that way our discussion is completely a safe space that you can show your face, you can show your opinions, and really have an open dialogue without worrying about being recorded.